this session is about principles of teaching commerce. What do you mean by principles of teaching commerce, and how are they different from maxims? So while maxims are some things that emerged out of practice, out of experiences of some educators. Principles, on the other hand, are, let us call them, hacks of teaching a particular subject. So in today's language, we term them as hacks of, in this case, teaching commerce. So what are those hacks that make your lesson interesting, that can keep students engaged in your lesson? And as a result of which, the byproduct of which is better learning and better learning experiences for students. So let me tell you how are these principles developed, or how have they come into existence. So all the learning experiences that a teacher can think of in her classroom, they all are based somewhere or the other on Edgar Dale's cone of learning. If you see, it is pyramidal in structure. The base is where the learner is most active, and the pinnacle is where the learners are most passive in the class. So as you will see, the more closer you are to the base, the more closer your learning experience is to the base, the better will be the learning for the child, because the child will be active in the class. And the more you move towards the top, it will keep getting abstract. It's getting from concrete at the base to abstract at the top. And the topmost experiences are the most abstract and least active and most passive in terms of the learner engagement in the class. The knowledge of this pyramid will help us understand the principles well. Now, before I move ahead, I want you to know commerce is typically a subject which is taught at the higher secondary level. It actually, in true sense, it appears once the students have cleared their grade 10. So there are these students who are now coming into grade 11. They are different from the learners that we have experienced so far. They are typically 15 to 16-year-olds. Okay, so they are towards the other end of the spectrum of adolescence. So they are no longer new adolescents, they are moving towards the end of their adolescence years. So they are very autonomous and self-directed. They do have some foundation of life experiences. They have experienced life for 15, 16 years, and they have those experiences. So it is very easy for teacher to build up on those experiences and knowledge. By now, they have defined a goal for themselves. So if a teacher can take them towards their goal, she will be their friend. And if the teacher cannot engage them if they find the experience in the class or the content that is being dealt in the class, which it does not connect to their goal, then no matter what the teacher does, they will not listen. So they're very goal oriented. They're very relevancy oriented by now. They will question you. Why are we learning this? Why do we need to know this? So unless and until the commerce, any teacher at this level can bring in that relevancy part of education in the classroom, it will not interest them. It will be difficult to catch their attention. They are very practical. They will, when I say practical, what I mean is, you will see it on their faces whether they are interested or not. They are not dealing in, they don't want to engage in niceties at this point of time. They like it, you will know it. They don't like it, again you will know it. They will not think about emotions at this age. While they are very practical, they demand respect. They want to be respected. So they need that kind of respect from everybody around them. So now that you know what are the characteristics of your learners when you're teaching commerce or commerce subjects, let us see which are the different principles which if a teacher follows, she will make her life simple, um, because learning will be better and retention will be better and student engagement will be better. So now there are different principles that we're going to discuss today. First is principle of activity, second is principle of flexibility, principle of individual differences, principle of learner-centeredness, and principle of community-centeredness. Let us move ahead and look at the first principle, that is the principle of activity. The principle of activity is based on some of the characteristics of the learner which we saw in the previous slide. A, they are autonomous. B, they are self-directed. And C, they do have some experiences. So now why you need to bring activity into the class is something that we've known all along. So we are not here to talk about why it needs to be activity centered, the class. But what you need to understand is the activity that you plan for your lesson should keep in mind these three things, that they're autonomous. So they give them that kind of activity where their autonomous instincts can emerge. So your activity, you have to take activity, that is a foregone conclusion, but your activity should be something that brings out their autonomous nature into the class. They are self-directed, so therefore your activity should be something that appeals to them, and your activity should build up on their previous experiences. Whatever, it's very easy for a teacher to assume what their life experiences would be, at least their educational experiences would be. So from there, build up on their educational experiences and plan your activity. So the role of the teacher is to, first of all, think about an activity according to keeping in mind the traits of your learner. It has to involve all the participants. Remember, the teacher will serve as a facilitator, not giver of the knowledge, but facilitating knowledge creation. So it is, the classroom should invariably be student-centric. You should know the interest of your learners. Interest of a learners differs from, from institution to institution, because there are typical characteristics of learners belonging to a particular institution. So, it will depend on institution to institution. So determine what are the interests of your learners. Explain how training objectives relate to the training activities, how these activities will help in fulfilling certain objectives. And then, of course, these activities can either be in pair or in groups or individual activities. So that was about the first principle of teaching commerce, which is principle of activity.